normally when a special ed person gets invited to a board meeting, it's either to be lunch or have lunch. So I'm grateful to not be lunch this evening. There were some questions I know raised at an earlier board meeting regarding our English language services. Hopefully I'll respond to a number of the questions that were raised, I think it was 2 or 3 meetings ago. And if I miss anything, I'm sure I'll be reminded. Before I begin, I just want to comment on the fact that English language services are extremely important to me. It's not a stepchild to what we do in the department. I spent the last 2 years as a superintendent principal of a very small district in Hudson County, where 90% of my children were Hispanic. And most of them were bilingual. And even after our bilingual ESL programs got them up to more or less speed, they were still going home to homes that were primarily foreign language speakers. So to me, this is a commitment we make to our children, to bring them along and get them where we need them to be. Let me just tell you some of the stuff that's going on. This all began because the district made a commitment to what's called sheltered instruction. There are different models of English language instruction. This is one of them. Each of them has their pros, their cons. This one, without going through that whole definition, approaches English language instruction as something that primarily takes place in the classroom. It is not just in language literacy, but across the content areas. And teachers are taught how to teach to foreign language speaking students. Simple things like not using contractions that we would find easy to understand, but the language learner may not. One of the questions was, how are students selected and exited? The law requires, federal and state, multiple criteria. There is a test called the Access, which is part of a network of districts around the country. And that test is used as a base for inclusion and for exit, but only a base. There must be multiple measures. Teacher input, other objective data. It's easier to have the other objective data when determining exit, because you may have statewide assessment, you have report card grades, but you always have to have multiple data to determine a child's inclusion. One of the questions was staffing. We have one full-time ESL teacher at Irving and one teacher who shared. That teacher shared over at the high school. At Bartle, we have one full-time ESL teacher and one shared teacher. That shared teacher is the Spanish teacher. And at the middle, we have one shared teacher, and at the high, I'm sorry, the middle one is the one that goes to Irving. And at the high school, we have one full-time teacher. That's our ESL staff. But remember, with sheltered instruction, the staff increases to include the classroom teachers. Students served. Now, we're showing 15 students in kindergarten, but their eligibility has not yet been determined. They are children who have been identified as potentially English language learners. In first grade, we have 7 students. And as you can see, at Bartle, we have 12, 6, 7, and 7. The middle school, we have a combination of 10 because children sometimes are grouped across the grades. And at the high school, we have 6 students. The ratios. In first grade, it's 7 and a class of 20. That class is purposely kept low. In second, it's 12 out of 21. In third, 6 out of 21. In fourth, 7 to 21. And in fifth, 7 to 21. One of the problems is how we distribute that. And I will discuss that on the last slide. Which is, believe it or not, this one. Looking ahead. I just want to answer your questions. There's an overarching problem that I feel an obligation to mention. It's a problem I've encountered not just in ELL, but in a number of areas. And I want to be very clear that this is a problem not of recent vintage, but seems to be historic. Someone has a brilliant idea, or at least a really good one, and it's discussed among a couple of people. And then somebody says, wow, let's do it. But the problem with the wow, let's do it, is those couple of people don't go beyond themselves. They don't include building principals. They don't include staff members. They don't deal with the bits and pieces of the plan, which means those bits and pieces throw themselves up in people's faces as you are beginning to implement. That is an historic problem. And for whatever little time I have with you, is a problem we are going to confront, at least in ed services. We need to look at programs like this and say, and that's part of this over here, what does the plan need to be successful? What are the resources? What is the impact on budget? Because we know we deal with a limited universe of dollars. And that's just a reality we all face. For example, I'll give you this training. There is a training next week on sheltered instruction. This is not to damn anyone, and certainly nobody who's here. Principals don't know who the staff are that should be trained. The training is given 3 or 4 days before school starts. How effective is that going to be? We ought to have begun training last year to implement the program successfully. We had the same problem with the community-based instruction in the high school. Wonderful idea. Except we've been dealing with resolving issues around it since I came on board. So we need to look at our resources. Should we be continuing to do push in and pull out? Sheltered instruction suggests that except for the most significant children, our program should be primarily push in. And I will say from my experience, with my 90% foreign speaking, push in works a lot better than pull out. Why? Because you need to have the children exposed to English language speakers. That leads to another problem. We put all our children into a single classroom at a grade level. Research suggests that they will gravitate to the children who share the same cultural values and background, not to that broader group of children you want them exposed to. So we have to look at these. We have to look at them committed now. The program, the concept is good, but we have to look at how do we make it effective for our children. And you know, if I were a teacher, I'd probably be concerned too. If I had a class with 12 out of 21 children who were English language learners, and if that was a testing grade on statewide assessment, I'd be quite concerned about how that was going to impact my scores. So there were issues here. I came to give you your basic answers, but as someone doing this for a long time, in terms of program planning, we have things we need to do. And what I hope is, it's going to put a push on our department, but I'm hoping that we'll approach all of these issues, like next year's community-based instruction, like this language learning, like how we distribute special educators. I'm hoping we'll do that before we hit the budget time, because there will be decisions that we make. We may not be able to do all the things we want to do. That's the truth about we all kind of want a piece of the same pie. But we can get there, we can have a stronger program, I truly believe that, as long as we keep in mind, and it may sound trite to you, but it's something I've been trying to build my career on, and certainly when I was over his last 2 years. It's about the children. That's all it can ever be about. The minute it becomes about anything else, we've lost our way. So, I hope you don't regret asking here this evening. But I guess I'm not much. I don't know if there's any questions that you're willing to ask.
Okay, so the staffing issue, right now there's a class of 12 out of 21 students in 4th, 2nd grade? Okay.
I haven't had it back. And 2nd grade.
Okay, in terms of the current staff that's employed at Bartle School, what would your recommendation be in terms of 12 out of 21 students, more than half of the students in the class? Doesn't seem right. The other classes are, you know.
Well, for this year, we're going to have to do a lot of pushing to support that classroom, and that's exactly what we'll do. I think long term, you're going to look at pushing as the way to do it, more than not. Not to say there won't be some pull out for support. We just have that's an anomaly. I mean, if you look at your numbers, that 12 is an anomaly. But for the shelter instruction program to work, unfortunately, because of the training and everything, it's the only way to go. Unless it's kind of a late game to flip these kids out.
To separate it into two
Yes.
sections.
I think so, and I could be wrong about that. But it's something we're going to have to really keep a close eye on.